We're going to hear from Trabian Shorters, who's doing work on changing the narrative around black males through the Be Me organization. Trabian?
Good afternoon. I'm so excited about what Gail said. My mind's still spinning on that. Look, I'm going to address just one very simple, important, basic concept. Who do you think we are? And by that, I don't mean African Americans, I mean Americans. Who do you think America is? I want to talk about the big picture, the really big picture. In fact, I want to talk about the frame that this picture sits in. Who do you think we are? For the longest time in America, if you ask the question of whose lives matter, it did play out on this racial totem pole that Gail describes. And at the top of the pole was, white men, and somewhere in the bottom was convicted felons, and black people and brown people and dogs were somewhere in the middle trying to figure out where they fit in terms of importance under the law. But by accident of birth, technology, and fate, we are presented an opportunity to change this frame. And what I mean by that is the baby boomers, once upon a time, were the largest generation in American history. And because of that, they set the pulse, the temperature for American personality, priorities, policies. But as of now, there's a generation even larger. It's the millennial generation. They are the biggest, the most digitally connected, the most diverse generation in American history. Right now, today, they represent the largest share of the workforce today, bigger than the boomers, bigger than the Gen Xers. And as a group, they are kind of undecided about this question of race. They haven't figured it out. They're not as informed or as engaged as past generations may have been on this question, in part because someone lied to them and told them that it was no longer an issue. But fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you think about it, we have a chance to reset. So in order for that transition to take place, though, we have to start telling a different story, because the story you tell creates the life you'll live. The psychological research shows that people actually respond to incidents based on pre-programmed scripts that are already running in their mind about the incident before it even happens, which is how you translate your missing purse into theft when there's no evidence in between to suggest that there's theft, right? And there's 4 very prevalent, very divisive, very persistent beliefs that we have to directly confront if we want to get to this America for all of us. And stop me if you heard it. Don't stop me, but you will have. But if any of these sound familiar, the first idea is this idea that black people, brown people, women and the poor want privileges that they haven't earned and can sometimes become a burden on society, right? You might occasionally hear this from people running for elected office. But it's a popular, persistent belief. Gail talked about things we have to change. This is one of the popular, persistent beliefs we have to change. The second idea you may hear from time to time is that the problems and threats that black boys in particular represent must be neutralized in order for America to prosper. Now, for me, that sounds dangerously close to saying black boys must be neutralized in order for America to prosper, but this is a popular statement. Third idea that is said too often in the frame that we operate out of too often is that they, whoever they are, deserves whatever happens to them. This is used for people accused of a crime or suspected of a crime. Whatever happens to you after that moment, you somehow brought on yourself, right? It disconnects our human empathy, right? And the fourth belief that's really popular and used to frame our actions and our policies is this idea that advancement for one group is a loss for another group, right? Very old concept. It's called divide and conquer. It's a great way to have things fall apart, but an impossible way for us to come together. So we believe in the Be Me community that if we were to have the America that is for all of its people, and by the way, when the majority of the nation is black and brown, then the nation cannot prosper unless its majority prospers. And the only way that we can have that future now is to abandon the frames of the old time that allow for this divisive, this contentious, this less than optimal America and to embrace a new idea. So there's 4 beliefs that we operate out of in the BME community. We believe that you should value all members of the human family if America is to prosper. We believe that Black men are assets to this human family and contributors who need to be recognized for what they do to build communities. We believe that you have to reject narratives that denigrate anyone, and that we have to work together for the things that we all value. Let me go double down on these things we all value. When we formed BME, this is a network of inspired Black men who have committed to building communities. Hundreds of them told us what they are going to lead on, whether you help them or not, and that they are committing their lives to this because it's who they are and it's what they must do. The issues they said that they would work on are, in order of frequency, they said youth development, education, economic opportunity, public safety, and matters of the environment. Now, when you step back and look at that, the thing that was most surprising and encouraging to us is which one of these is the issue that's only for the Black community? Youth development, education. It turns out that we literally all care about the same things. So why are we divided? Why don't we come together? I believe it's because we have inculcated a practice of denigration and division. And to make this less big picture, let me illustrate. For those of you who care about education, raise your hand if you've heard that half of our students are dropping out of high school in some places. Raise your hand if you ever heard a stat that says that. Right, look around, see this is very common. For those of you who work on issues of equity, raise your hand if you've heard that poverty is persistent, especially amongst Black people and brown people in America. See, it's this narrative we all know very well. Now, for those of you who, again, work on education, raise your hand if you can tell me how many Black males, for instance, are either in college or have college degrees. Just raise your hand if you know that number. Okay, for those of you who are familiar with the numbers about poverty, raise your hand if you can tell me how many Black families in America are millionaires. Just, nobody, huh? What I'm trying to point out to you is that when it comes to the story of the deficits, of the denigration, of the negatives, those of you in this room who are the good guys are well equipped to tell the story of other people's brokenness, deficiencies, and failures. But you're empty-handed on the story of their contributions to this country. And if we're gonna make progress, we're gonna have to start acknowledging each other's contributions. And let me take some of the stiffness out of the air and get you breathing again. I'm gonna have you just quickly, if you could turn to somebody at the table, turn to your neighbor. For those of you who've been to church, turn to your neighbor, okay? And I want you to do something, don't speak to them. I want you to do something for just 20 seconds. If you could turn to your neighbor, look them right in the eye, okay, turn now, look them right in the eye, I can see you. And what I want you to do is try to notice everything you can about what is wrong with the person sitting in front of you. Okay. Okay. You just, no, don't tell them. Don't tell them. But you can stop. Look, anytime I've ever done this, there's always laughter, right? But why do we laugh, right? We laugh because, it's uncomfortable and something, it's just plain wrong that to look at somebody and the first thing you do is try to figure out what's wrong with them, right? But when it comes to our young people, when it comes to folk who are challenged, what is the first thing that we do? Except to define them by their worst moment, their greatest struggle, the thing that makes them the least a part of the American polis. And we believe that just fundamentally has to stop. You would not introduce your friend to somebody else by saying, hi, this is my friend John. He used to wet the bed as a kid, and his mother was on welfare. So we in the Be Me community start by recognizing black men as assets. We don't define them by their deficits. Everybody's got challenges, but you don't define people by their challenges. Defining people by their challenges is the definition of stigmatizing them. And once you stigmatize someone, you're less likely to observe their positive contributions. And you may even begin to act as if poverty is the norm for black and brown people, when the majority of America's poor are not black or brown. Right? You might act as if going to prison is built into the birth of a black and brown child, a male child, when the majority of people in prison are not black or brown, right? And so we want to tell a different story about America's future, and we believe to do that, we're going to have to start telling the truth, we're going to have to start acknowledging each other's contributions, and we're going to have to build on assets rather than fix people. People are the solution, not the problem. And last thing, next time someone asks you, who do you think you are? We want you to be able to tell them that this America values all members of the human family, believes that black and brown and women and others are assets, rejects narratives that denigrates, and works together to build a more caring and prosperous future. I'll say more about Be Me when we get into the conversation. Thank you for your time.